Hey, Amie.
Yeah, Juan.
Give me that beat.
It's Baseball Shangri-La with Amie Cuevas and Juan Ramirez.
What's up, party people? She is Amie Cuevas. I am Juan Ramirez. You are listening or watching Baseball Shangri-La. If you are listening to us on the audio portion of the show, please make sure you're subscribed to the podcast, rate us, write us a review, help spread the word. Let everybody know. Come join the party. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel. Hit that notification button. Give us a thumbs up and leave us comments. We love engaging with you. And most importantly, make sure you're following us on social media on X at BB Shangri-La, on Instagram, YouTube, and not Twitch, Bluesky, excuse me. Bluesky. I see. I just got into autopilot right there at Baseball Shangri-La. Amie, ¿cómo estás?
Hi. I was going to say, well, it's Monday. And then I just realized it's not actually Monday. So
That's right. So for you loyal listeners who are viewers who are turning in and going, why is the show one day late? Well, Amie was
on a jet plane.
She was on a jet plane because Amie was at spring training. So this whole episode, Amie's going to be giving us reports about spring training because she was there. But before we go into that baseball thing, Amie, may I have a point of privilege?
Yes.
Okay. Last week, we lost a giant of the film industry. For you loyal listeners, viewers who watch this show, you all know we like to talk about movies on this show occasionally. And from the comments corner last week, it seems unanimous that everyone agrees with me. It's Aliens over Aliens. So I really appreciate people sharing their thoughts with us. But I want to just take a few minutes to acknowledge the death, the loss of Gene Hackman. Gene Hackman is. There's just no way to say it, Amie. He was a master of his work. I know, like when we have the conversations of who is the greatest actor of all time, it's always Al Pacino or Robert De Niro, Jack Nicholson, Marlon Brando. You know, those guys are in the conversation, and it seems like Gene Hackman, in my opinion, is not mentioned enough in that conversation. I think Gene Hackman for me falls into the category of Robert Duvall, where it's actors that are just good all the time and they're not showy, but
You kind of take them for granted how good they are.
exactly. So I've been having a little mini Gene Hackman movie marathon, and I've just been having these constant reminders as to how damn good he is. And it really sucks that there's a lot of it's like his death is suspicious now. It just, I really hope it wasn't foul play. I mean, yes, the guy was 95 years old. He was already retired from acting. He lived a good life, but I'd hate for him to go because it was something suspicious. But anyways, I just want to take the time to celebrate Gene Hackman because he's such a wonderful actor. Amie, I just wanted, are you a Gene Hackman fan? And if you are, any favorite Gene Hackman movies or movies you felt he was underappreciated in?
I would just say in general, I think he was underappreciated. But like as you were talking about like celebrating his life, all of a sudden just scenes from the birdcage and them like dancing at the end, like dancing out of the place. Like if I was gonna go out on any like uncertain terms, like I would want it to be something like that. So that's kind of what I'm picturing in my head for him. Just like, you know what? He lived a great life.
I'm so glad that you brought up the birdcage because for me, that is, I think, my most underappreciated Gene Hackman performance in the birdcage.
I think
As,
everybody in that movie was underappreciated, to be quite honest.
as great, I mean, as funny as Robin Williams and Nathan Lane is, and Hank Azaria, my wife and I, we still quote Spartacus to one another.
Agador?
I am Spartacus. You know,
I had a gold Pontiac Sunfire, and initially his name was Agador Spartacus.
wow, Pontiac Sunfire. Wow.
Mhm.
Yeah, I feel the Birdcage is one of the best executed farces in film. If anybody doesn't know what a farce is, I always refer to them to that movie to see how it executed. But
When
all these
Robin Williams slips in the kitchen and it
yes.
was not scripted and they're laughing, like, but they're trying to stay in character, like, I could rewind and watch that scene over and over again.
And I'll tell you, that part cracks me up. The other part that cracks me up is the dance. Fosse, 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 Martha Graham, Madonna, Madonna, Michael Kidd, Michael Kidd. But keep it all in here. I love that. Okay. That all being said, the person who cracks me up the most in that movie, Amy, is Gene Hackman.
Mhm.
Gene Hackman is so fun. And shouts out to one of our listeners, Edgar, who had said to me about Gene Hackman in the Birdcage was the reason why the rest of that movie works is because Gene Hackman is so committed in playing that stuffed conservative Republican senator. And I just I
When he's, like, fawning over Nathan Lane's, like, drag character, and you're
yes,
just like, "Oh, sir."
exactly. And it's just funny because Gene Hackman just has such a tough, like he has a reputation of being a tough guy. Like he was like, yeah, I mean, Bill Murray said this story that another great Gene Hackman performance and movie for me is The Royal Tenenbaums, another comedy. And Bill Murray would come out and tell stories that Gene Hackman was really tough to the director of that film, Wes Anderson. Like he was a real jerk to him. And there were you hear these stories that Gene Hackman was just he was like a no nonsense guy and all the frills. But it's funny because, like I said, he has this reputation. You think of the French Connection when you think of Gene Hackman. You think of the sheriff in Unforgiven. You think of these
Oh
tough
my
guy
gosh,
roles.
yeah, I forgot about that.
And the first two movies that we ended up talking about him in this show were comedies in The Birdcage and The Royal Tenenbaums. That being said, for me, Amy, my favorite Gene Hackman film, and I just recently watched it because I gave myself a little Gene Hackman movie marathon, is Francis Ford Coppola's masterpiece, The Conversation. If anybody has never seen that film, I highly recommend it. I think Gene Hackman is phenomenal in that movie. It for me, it's my like I said, it's my favorite Gene Hackman performance. That's the one I go back to, and I feel we mentioned how like comedy was out of his, it was so out of character for him. The Conversation is a very understated performance, and he is
I'm
just so good.
surprised no Lex Luthor mentions,
Yeah, okay. I'm glad you brought that up.
because that's like when I think of him, like, there are so many good movies, but, like, he played opposite Christopher Reeves.
I'm glad you mentioned that because that was one of the movies that I saw as
Oh.
part of my Gene Hackman movie marathon. It had been a long time since I've seen Superman.
The
I,
Replacements, I'm just looking through his IMDb right now.
I don't know how long it's been since you've seen the original Superman, Amy. I don't think, even for the record, everybody, I am Superman 2. I think Superman 2 is the best Superman movie in the whole series. I think it's one of up there as one of the best comic book movies. But I was surprised at how much when I was watching Superman, I the second half of Superman works better for me than the first half of Superman. I think that screenplay has a lot of issues in the first Superman. They tried to do so much in that movie that everything just comes so fast. But Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor, that is it's a cartoon. He plays Lex Luthor like a cartoon until the scene when he puts the kryptonite on Superman. That's the one time you see him show his menace there. That being said, I just realized after not watching Superman for a really long time that I'm not a really big fan of the first half of that movie. I feel like that movie is like, why are we going so fast? Can we like let something breathe? Can we develop stuff? Like, can we
I
like all of a sudden Superman shows up in a suit and I'm like, where did you get the suit from? Like we don't see that in Richard Donner's version. So
It's been a while since I've seen them. I had to take a step back from Superman for a while because my brother, when he was little, he's 9 years younger than me, he watched them all on repeat. So to me, it's just one long movie. So if you're like, oh no, Superman 2 is the best, so that was just later in the long movie.
You know what, Amy? That is a valid point, because I do believe they were making those movies at the same time, the Superman and Superman 2.
Oh, I
And-
just mean like he would play one and start the next and then the next and then start over again.
But you could very easily combine the first two Supermans and make it one long movie.
Mhm.
But yeah, so thank you for indulging me. I wanted to acknowledge Gene Hackman, because he's just like, I was just watching Hoosiers, the ultimate like sports movie. Everybody refers to, when they talk about a coach, Gene Hackman in that. And I will tell you this too. I'm going to take this to my grave, and I might get people come at me. I don't think Hoosiers is a very good movie either. Like, I feel
Nobody
like
needs to come at you. You get to have an opinion. It's valid. Hey, you even get to change it. It's fine.
there's no development in these movies. We go from here, and then it's like, wait, how did we get here? We barely see these guys practicing, and all of a sudden they're winning games, and there just doesn't like. But I will say this:
They say we
Gene
have no attention span these days.
Gene Hackman is fantastic in Hoosiers. Him and Barbara Hershey. Barbara Hershey, what happened to her? She was so great in the 80s.
I was
And
going to say the 80s happened to her.
yeah, it's like Barbara Hershey was a really good. I'm like, not only that, she was in The Last Temptation of Christ, Hannah and her sisters. Yes, the 80s were her heyday, but she was like, her and Gene Hackman, I thought, were the best part of Hoosiers. I just like, as a movie as a whole, I'm like, why is this movie loved so much? Why, like, this movie is just not very good. It's like, I don't know, it's too sappy. But
It's nostalgia. I think I actually, because I had heard that Gene Hackman had passed away, and then it was some suspicious circumstances. But then I saw a post, I think on Bluesky by Mel Brooks, talking about how he was like Gene Hackman was recommended to him, but also like he really wanted to be in Young Frankenstein, and just like although like I haven't seen that movie in forever, but just knowing like even just seeing the little image that he posted, it was like, oh look, it's young Gene Hackman, like oh.
Young Frankenstein to me is one of the greatest comedies ever. Like that one stands the test of time. Do you know who recommended Gene Hackman to Mel Brooks for that part?
Was it Gene Wilder?
Gene Wilder and Gene Hackman played tennis together.
Yeah, it was
And
Mel Brooks was talking something about that, and I was just like,
they played tennis together, and Gene Hackman told Gene Wilder, "Do you think he would let me do it? Because I
that
really want to do comedy." And he kills. I mean, it's a small part in Young Frankenstein, but he kills in that part. And it's again, we started with the Birdcage and Royal Tenenbaums. Gene Hackman was a guy who wanted to do comedy because he did improv when he was younger, and it just goes to show you how you just get like typecast in Hollywood. You get a little bit of success, and then that's who you need to play for the rest of your career. You
I
need
think
to
it's
play these types of roles.
I think it's a reminder that we're all multifaceted and that, we show different versions of ourselves to different people in different situations. And it's just a reminder that we all have so much to share.
Absolutely. So thank you for indulging me, and rest in power, Gene Hackman, one of the greats. So let's talk some baseball. So let's transition with a pleasant good evening to you wherever you may be. So, ladies and gentlemen,
Whoa. Speaking of Jose Ayala and Vin Scully, the intro, we did have a
uh-oh.
couple comments in our comments corner.
Okay, go ahead.
So, Jose Ayala had the question. He was curious what we think if Kike comes up big again in October, will he take another team friendly deal? And Jose says that he honestly thinks he won't this time around.
I tend to agree with Jose Ayala. I think, especially if they don't win the World Series this year, I think, yeah, he's going to, because he's 33 years old. I think
Mhm.
he's going to look to try to get at least one last payday.
He's at least
Um,
got his 10-year service time, I believe. So he's got that going for him.
yeah. Now, if they win the World Series again, I don't know. At that point, you would think maybe you start getting greedy and like, look, if we won 2 in a row, can we win 3 in a row? Like,
I
maybe
don't know that that's greedy when Shohei wants to win the next 9. So,
that's
um,
true.
I don't know, because I think it still comes down to like the pay cut versus how many millions are too many millions. Because let's say he goes and gets let's just go big. Let's say he gets double what he's getting right now, but you're playing for a team that isn't guaranteed to make it. Is that worth it? Is that worth doubling whatever you're going to make? And that's the question that only he can answer. I don't know. I guess it would depend on how bad winning is like a focus of yours.
Absolutely. I don't if they don't win the World Series, I don't think he's going to give any more discounts. I think he's going to look to want to get paid.
Yeah.
That's how I see it.
We'll see how much winning versus getting paid plays into that in the off season. And then David wants a taco. Basically, I appreciated your research too, but he said he didn't expect that the playoff pool would be as small as it was. You'd think that it would be way more. So what they get when they win the World Series and then they divvy it up between them. And I agree. Like I thought it would be more than that.
I guess part of me for me was just like I always forget that there's even a playoff pool. I always forget that these guys get extra money for being in the playoffs. So it's never been a part of the conversation for me. It's always like, no, pay me now, pay me for my money, pay me for what you think I'm going to do. So
yeah, that's fair. That's fair. All right, now whatever.
All right, let's get into some baseball talk because Amie was actually in Arizona. She was in Glendale. She was there with the team at spring training. Amie, what did you learn about the Doyers while you went there? And can I just start by saying this? Was it a coincidence that Amie shows up in Arizona and the Doyers actually start winning spring training games? I think not. Right now, what do you have to say for yourself?
I appreciate the vote of confidence that my presence might have brought. There was so much. I wish you were there because bumped into like all kinds of people and they were like, "Where's Juan?" And I was like, "He's not coming this year." So next year we need to plan better. Oh, and I got a really cool sparkly hat, so I'm gonna switch hats.
Oh, look at that. Ladies and gentlemen, Elton John has just joined the show.
I know, right? Isn't it cute?
There you go. Totes
I don't
adorable.
usually do like sparkly hats, but it was so glittery. So, so much stuff was happening, right? So we flew out, got in there on Friday, and then as everybody found out, Shohei Ohtani was making his spring training debut that night. So came in as DH, heard a little bit of grumbling from the crowd, saw stuff online, and then in his first at bat, Shohei hits a home run. And like, I'd say who saw that coming, but it's almost kind of like it's Shohei, it's the unicorn.
I mean, it's amazing, right? How the unicorn just makes everything look so easy. Let me ask you this, because from when I was watching the game, at least from the angle behind home plate, it looked like there were empty seats, but I know like all three games this weekend were sold out. How packed was it in Glendale this past weekend?
So Friday and Saturday were definitely packed. Like there was a lot of people. I think a lot of people wanted to also try to catch home runs in the lawn seats. Like if you were looking
I
up,
will say that the lawn looked like standing room only. Like the
yeah,
lawn looked like it was packed.
even behind because I was kind of wandering around through most of the games. There were people standing behind the end of of each of the sections. So what you couldn't see was the thoroughfares were packed and most of those people who weren't in their seats were probably in line to get food because much like Dodger Stadium, the food and the beer lines packed throughout the entirety of the game. So I think it was just a matter of time of like, okay, I finally got through this food line. Let me go back to my seat.
And
But
for clarification purposes, guys, Amie was there in a press capacity, but she did also try to mingle and go around the stadium. So she's going to give us reports on both aspects of it.
so we'll pause on the official Dodger stuff. I did run into Carlos, the Desert Doyer, on Sunday.
Desert Doyer, that's right.
So got to see him, say hello, and watch, the beginning of the game with him and some of his friends. And it just we all bring what we bring to this game, right? We all have much like we have different facets. Seeing him there, he brings so much joy to people. Like when I bumped into him, he had just picked up a Dodger dog and I could not for the life of me remember his first name. And I was just like, "Hey, Desert Doyer." And he turned around and then we recognized each other and like had a nice chat, but people kept stopping to take pictures with him. And he does it to bring joy to the games. And you just gotta, like, with everything going on in the world, you just gotta appreciate stuff like that. He could not be a nicer guy.
Yeah, is Desert Doyer doing game shows while he's out there, giving a lot of, as the great Ross Porter used to say, would you like to try some Dodger trivia? So, what else do you have for us from spring training, Amy?
So as we know, Shohei made his debut, hit the home run. Freddie Freeman actually made his debut the day before on Thursday. So we saw that. Will Smith was also out, and we found out that he's had a bone bruise.
I was going to say he had a what?
He had a brain bruise. No, he had a bone bruise. And initially we heard that he'd had it since June, and so everybody was kind of like, "Wait, June? Like how long? Like how long has this been going on?" And so it happened apparently when he was in New York for that series. He slid in wrong, and so they take anywhere from weeks to months to heal, and we're seeing the effects of that. So that could be potentially what has caused his production to slump a little bit. But he'll never use that as an excuse, kind of like Doc said last week. He's saying that he thinks it's actually his swing mechanics, not so much the bone bruise. And so he's been working in the offseason to perfect his swing.
So let me ask you this, Amy. Am I wrong that Robert said that this actually might still linger going into the start of this season?
Yes.
This bone. Are they
It's really rest is the only way to heal it. And as a baseball player, you don't really get much rest.
So are they giving any serious talk of Will Smith starting the season on the injured list?
They're not saying that right now. So I mean, that obviously, as we know, that could change. But as of right now, no. So
all of a sudden things in the catcher spot got a little interesting where I'm like, well, maybe Dalton Rushing may have more of a look. Injuries, we're going to get into it. Injuries, I think, have put everything up in the air in terms of who is going to make the opening day roster. You mentioned Federico just very quickly. We mentioned how the unicorn makes everything look easy. He homers in his first at bat. Well, Federico did the same thing, hitting home runs in his first two spring training games. Did you see him running
Saturday and Sunday? Because he didn't hit one on Thursday, and he didn't play on Friday.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I don't want you to go back.
No base running blunder there, Jose.
But he's hitting 375 as of Sunday, so they had Monday off. Did I see what?
Did you see him running? Is it noticeable how limited he is by that ankle?
I mean, there were people blocking. I'm not that tall, so I wasn't like looking at the mechanics of it. But he did say in the post game interview that we were in on Sunday that, trying to find my note on here, that it felt good playing. So he had a fix during the World Series, which we saw, and so that has been helping. And from Saturday to Sunday, people told him that his jogging around the bases was better as of Sunday, like better looking. Which, I mean, I was not paying that close of attention, but clearly his teammates were. So looking better, and he did not tape up Saturday or Sunday. So that was like his breaking news for the media on Sunday. Was
right.
Like
he did make sure to point that out.
By the way, no tape.
Yeah.
It's big info. But he was saying that he was feeling a little bit more restricted on that Thursday game, and so he decided not to tape up on Saturday or Sunday. And it's not feeling bad. They're still working on him, like jumping. Like the biggest concern is like when he leaps up to catch a ball and then like lands on the base. And there's only so much that they can do to prepare him for that when he's working out, simulating it. It's just going to take time as he ramps up and really just does it on the bases. So
at the time we are recording this, it is Tuesday, March 4th. Here's my reminder to you guys that the Tokyo series, the games that actually count, are about 2 weeks away right now. So we're getting, even though it may seem like, we got plenty of time to get ready, those Tokyo games are sneaking up on us, I feel, really, really fast.
And with that, there's a lot of people that we thought we had I don't want to say we had a better handle on, or not we. I always say we like I'm in there, but the front office has a better handle on. So as we all know, tonight, Tuesday, Roki Sasaki is making his spring training debut in an actual game on one of the main fields. Yamamoto will pitch first for, I think, like 3 to 4 innings. They're trying to build him up, and then Sasaki will take over from there, and they're just going to see how that goes, because he is not actually settled on as that second pitcher. While they have announced that Yamamoto and Sasaki should be doing it, they're still taking a look to see how Sasaki is going to ramp up. So it's not necessarily guaranteed that he might pitch in that second game. They're still exploring their options.
Wow. Again, remember all the grief that I got when I said I'm really surprised that they announced that Roki was going to pitch in Japan? And everybody was giving me crap and being like, of course he's going to pitch in Japan. What's wrong with you, Juan? And now all of a sudden they're like, look, we're not committed to him pitching game 2. Like,
which is so funny, because you take that very, very seriously. And I know I have the things that I take seriously, but for me, I'm just like, even if he does, like, so let him pitch an inning. Like, just let him get an inning in.
Again, Amie, all I'm saying is, you just because someone puts a microphone in front of your mouth doesn't mean you have to say anything.
Well, but you've also got people putting microphones in front of your mouth, and they're like, tell us.
Hey, they could just do the Marshawn Lynch. I'm just here so I don't get fined. You know?
And in that vein, Hae-Sung Kim is kind of in that same boat right now, where they're seeing how he's developing. They're kind of still exploring their options at second base if his bat kind of doesn't pick up. So he's another one of those that they're kind of taking a closer look at. I was reading, I'm trying to see where my notes were, that he's one of those ones with the Dodgers contract that he doesn't have a requirement that he has to have his consent to be sent down to the minors. So the hope is still that he'll adapt his swing in time for opening day, but they're still keeping an eye on that. It didn't hurt his case, though, that he hit his first home run as a Dodger on Saturday. And so just seeing him in his like post-game interview, like happy, like getting interviewed, it was just, God, I love baseball.
Can we talk about this Kim situation? Because I think it's very interesting, because up until before he hit that home run, there was a lot of people that started raising their eyebrows to see how hitting wise he wasn't looking too good.
Even one of the articles that I read was still not fully giving him credit. They were like, well, and the wind kind of carried it. And I was like, dang, here's some flowers, but I'm taking half of them back.
Did you get any of this while you were down in Glendale? I seem very, I can't say that I'm surprised, but I find it interesting that Tommy Edman seems to be getting the majority of his time at second base. And at one point, the conversation was Hae-Sung Kim is really going to be viewed more as a center fielder. And so it's between him, Bacchus, and Outman fighting for that center field spot. It's going to lead us into another conversation. So I'm just curious, is that what you heard in terms of Hae-Sung Kim? Are they really looking at him? I know you mentioned second base, but is there talk of they're focusing more on the outfield for him, or?
There hasn't been. They're just, Dave Roberts is taking this stance of like, he's just evaluating each day as it comes. And so he did, like, he mentioned like spring training games. They're not like looking at it like, oh my God, we have to win. It's more, let's see how everybody's progressing. And he's just going to evaluate those choices as they get closer to Tokyo.
So then to piggyback on that, because Tommy Edman is playing so much at second base,
he's actually starting second base in Tuesday's game this evening.
The majority of the games that I watch, he's playing second base, and I was really under the assumption that he was going to be playing center field. I'm like, when is he going to start playing center field? And now I keep asking that question because of this, Amie. In terms of the outfield, and especially center field, I don't think anybody is taking control and saying, like, I want that position. Like, I don't think Andy Bacchus has looked good in spring training. I don't think Outman has. I don't think Chris Taylor has. You know who has looked good in spring training? Is David Bodie. Now, David Bodie, this was as of Sunday, at the end of Sunday, his numbers were, I mean, the guy was hitting 500. He had 2 doubles and 2 home runs. Now, for me,
And that's in 20 at bats.
yeah. So for me, if guys like Outman and Bacchus are not hitting, and and you already had the conversation with them that they may start in the minors, and Chris Taylor is Chris Taylor, I would think we would start seeing maybe Edmund put him in center field and see what Bodie looks like in the infield, because if a guy's producing, because he's a guy that he's not going to stick around. You're not going to
Bodie's
be able to send Bodie to the minors. Like, you're either going to have to find a way to keep him or you're going to lose him. And this is not to say, because yes, the season could start. There's a reason why David Bodie is a free agent, so he could revert back to what he was. But
he
I
was
mean,
he was hitting 304 last year. Like, he didn't play in many games. He was only in 37 games. So, I mean, mm, he's basically said that he'll do whatever it takes to help the team. Dave, they're all saying like he's doing great, keep it up. He's been working with, they all refer to him as Woody, but why am I blanking on his name? First base coach. Woodward, Chris Woodward.
Oh, Chris Woodward. Sorry.
I was like, so I'm sure somebody was, as they're listening to this later, screaming, "It's Chris Woodward."
Exactly.
I got you guys. It took me a second. I got you.
I finally heard you. Thank you.
But he's having a great start. I think like you said, I think you take advantage of that. But I think also with this team, if you have Dave Roberts in full evaluation mode, I don't know that if anybody even was clamoring like, I want center field, and I want center field, like that would make a difference if they're trotting everybody out there to get a look. Because I think I saw Kike out there, I want to say Friday night. Pages was out there, I think, on Saturday. And then, or no, maybe he was out there on Sunday. It's all blurring together. But like, you've got a bunch of people making their reps out there.
I did not see this coming. I didn't. I didn't think that David Bodie was going to be inserting himself in the conversation for a spot on this bench, on this Dodgers team bench. But the fact that you have other players on this team that aren't taking advantage of this and showing, yeah, I can hold down center field, give me the job, makes me wonder, like, hey, maybe we have to really take a serious look at keeping David Bodie on the team again, especially because you can start Outman and Bajes in the minors.
Well, and right, so and that's the thing where, and like we were talking about on the batting, about going to the batting cages last week, which a lot of people really resonated with the batting cages. So we might, not only do we need to have a live episode where you and I go on a field trip, but we just have a group like outing or something. But Pages, somebody was saying in an article, I think it was on The Athletic, that Pages could be in right field more, which is interesting because that's where Theo is going to play. And then if you're looking at stats for like Chris Taylor and Outman, I saw a stat where the two of them combined have gone 7 for 34 with 15 strikeouts in spring training. So it's like, to me, it's just a reminder that this stuff is not easy. This stuff is hard. And everybody's trying to ramp up and do their best because they all know they're basically kind of trying out for this team, even if they do have a spot. You've got Outman and Pages who could get optioned down to the minor league level. You've got CT3 where a lot of people are saying he's probably not going to get moved because of the money still owed on his contract, but because he does replicate some of the positions that other players play. Like, these guys have to know it. And it's just, to me, it's a little bit frustrating because you know that they're trying their hardest. And if they're not seeing the results that they want, they've also got all of social media sounding off on where they're at as well.
Yeah, it is. Again, this is for all the talk that the Dodgers are ruining baseball and all these people talking about the fact that the season's already over, already pencil in the Dodgers as champions. If a team that is favored as the Dodgers,
I wish it was that easy. My God, we wouldn't have as much stress as we've had in the last several years.
But not only that, Amie, I mean, should there be this many amount of questions going into a team that is, by many other people's standards, is considered perfect? I mean, right now, I don't know who their starting center fielder is.
I mean, it's sure, it's a luxury to have this kind of a problem where you have log jams and you don't know, but it's not for lack of people who can produce. You can throw Kike out in center field. If you can plug in Tommy Edman at second. I saw him running drills on Sunday. He looked really good out there. Him and Chris Taylor were running drills. Like it's not for lack of options though. So, they'll find somebody to put there. They'll work it out.
And a quick update for those of you scoring at home between the. So it looks like Yamamoto started the game against the Reds, and the Rojos scored 2 runs off of Yamamoto in the top of the first. So we still do not have a Sasaki sighting. Sasaki sighting, excuse me.
Well, he won't be. At least they're hoping that Yamamoto will go 3 to 4 innings, and they're hoping to ramp up Sasaki to about the same. So,
what else do you got for us in spring training wise?
I don't know. I mean, this isn't really an update, but have you seen Kike Hernandez running around with that like half helmet?
No, what is that about?
I don't know. So I was asking questions. I ran into Dave Assay, so I was like, is it functional? Is it like oh, I'm thinking like maybe it has to do with like pitchers getting hit, like if you're out there taking grounders, is it like for safety? Nobody is quite sure, but it's just basically Kike being Kike. So he had it on, a couple of the days that I was there. So half helmet visor. It's the new look. I need to go find one so I can wear it to games.
He really goes by the beat of his own drummer, doesn't he?
But it's so much fun. Like yeah. It just brings some levity to the game. Friday, Kike, Freddie, Mookie, they were all taking grounders and they took batting practice. Austin Barnes, I'm trying to think who else was out there. Miguel Rojas, Chris Taylor, they were all out there and they all kind of left at different points to get ready for the game because it was an evening game against the Angels. And then Bobby Miller threw a bullpen on Friday, so he's kind of ramping up. Dustin May started as the pitcher, and we saw him, I think go a couple innings. That's where wondering and like trying to catch up with players as they're coming in and out of the game kind of took me away from being able to watch everything as it was like playing out inning by inning. So there were certain things that I did miss in the game itself.
Did Dave Roberts say anything about Dustin May and possibly being the 5th starter?
They haven't confirmed anything yet. I think that still falls under their evaluating things. But I mean, obviously Shohei had that good game, so we got to talk to him afterwards. I think it was Dave Vassay or one of the beat writers who had asked him, like, you went to high school with Kikuchi, like, how could you do that? Or like, how were you able to whatever? And Shohei's answer was, I'm lucky. So,
what else do you got for us, Amie?
just more of the same. Like Tony Gonsolin and Blake Snell threw a bullpen on Saturday. As you know, when people are at spring training, when people are throwing bullpens or guys are going to the backfields, you have crowds everywhere. And so you could see them just all lined up. Anytime a player walked from the workout facility to one of the backfields, you'd hear the shouting, like screams, players' names being shouted. So like you could hear Bonda or Dustin May or, Freddie, like, so just all the chants. I'm trying to think who else did we have? Emmett Sheehan also threw a bullpen. So everybody's just really working on getting ramped up. Roki Sasaki threw a bullpen on Sunday. Same with Dustin May. Jared Karros was out on one of the backfields throwing one himself. So really just everybody's kind of working towards getting ramped up, and they know that they have that shortened spring training and they're getting ready for Japan. So all the stuff that we know, but just getting to see it in real life versus just getting the updates kind of on Sportsnet.
In terms of updates in health, any further updates on some of these relievers? I know at the time we are recording this, it appears that Michael Kopech has finally thrown his first bullpen, but he's clearly not starting on the roster this year. He will start on the IL. We already know about Evan Phillips. Enriquez was a guy. Now, he also threw his first bullpen. He's behind, so he's going to start on the IL. Any other updates in terms of relievers? Because it seems like there's a growing list of relievers that are going to start the season on the IL. What options do we have if those people do start on the IL?
I mean,
Oh, Michael Grove is another one. Michael
yes,
Grove.
right. Well, and I mean, a lot of these people they're not shockers, right? We already knew a lot of this stuff. I mean, they did option Nick Frosso, so I think he got the start on Friday, but he was optioned this Sunday. They did reassign, let's see, right-handed pitchers Carlos Duran, Julian Fernandez, and then Justin
This is
Darvish.
all part of the first cuts, right?
Mhm.
On spring training.
So there's now 59 players left in big league camp because they also reassigned outfielders Ryan Ward, Justin Dean, Zaire Hope, and Josue de Paula. And the last two, they've been having a great spring training, but as we know, they're very young still, so they're still developing. So they're just kind of getting shuttled back down, and I'm sure we'll see them again. You know,
Yeah, if anything from this spring training, Zaire Hope has caught my attention, and I'm
he
very
didn't
curious.
last year when we saw him in Rancho.
No, I mean, he just seeing him in spring training games this year, he just looks like a baseball player. Like he looks comfortable. He doesn't look like, deer caught in the headlights. Like he looks like so I'm very curious to see his development, especially with the Dodgers outfield situation being as fluid as it is. That's not to say that we're going to see him early, but I'm curious to see how his develop, because I'm not sure it's been assigned yet. He may start the season in Double-A, so I'm
Maybe,
not
yeah.
really sure where he's going to go, but I think of those names that you just mentioned, Zaire Hope is one that has really stood out. I think Justin Robleski, we saw him very briefly last year during the season, and I was impressed with the way how he handled himself. I'm very curious to see about his development, and he hasn't been cut yet, so Robleski may
Mm-mm.
be an option to make that bullpen with all these injuries that the Dodgers have to their bullpen already to start the season.
Yeah, it'll much like people are still vying for, we're trying to figure out if Dustin May or Tony Gonsolin is going to get that last spot. That's kind of, I mean, as you've mentioned multiple times over episodes, like Gratterall starting on the IL. You mentioned like Phillips developing a little bit. He's been a little bit behind schedule, and Kopech. So I mean, they still have options. You've got Tanner Scott. You've got Kirby Yates. Kirby Yates pitched on Sunday, I believe. So got to see him. So you do have options. It's just trying to figure out where all of these puzzle pieces go. And I know we're going to get to Nestor Cortes and Brent Honeywell later, but that's where I think I messaged you this week and I'm like, can we just add Brent Honeywell back in, please? Like, I know we can't, but could we just? You are on mute and we are losing all of your wisdom.
My apologies, a thousand pardons. We are going to have a Brent Honeywell mention fairly soon. Anything else in terms of what you witnessed down in spring training? Anything that you want to share with us in terms of your conversations?
No, I mean, I think I'm still processing. Got to talk to like Hunter Fiducia, some of the guys just coming in, all of these guys, they're so personable. They're just so kind. Um, so it just like I feel like we just have a really good team. However it shakes out, um, we're really fortunate. Like Anthony Bondo was out signing baseballs, for kids for like well over an hour. Like just all of these guys really care about the fans.
So before we move on, I just want, since you go to spring training every year, being that the Dodgers are coming off of a World Series win, did you think spring training was more crowded this year or last year?
So, not gonna lie, I went into it kind of cringing a little bit of like, "Oh, man. Like, what are we in for?" From a fan perspective, from a media perspective.
Because last year was the first year of the unicorn, so there
Mhm.
was a lot of people out there. This year, I'm just curious, coming off of a World Series ring, the addition of Roki, what are the differences between last year and this year?
So, I will say I first started going, I guess, 3 years ago, so the year before we got the unicorn, and there were a lot of people, don't get me wrong, it's the Dodgers, but it didn't feel like the urgency, it felt like more like we were talking about, very baseball focused, where I think this year it was baseball, but you also get maybe more of the, I don't know what to I don't want to like discount it, but like more tourists that are there to see, Sasaki, Shohei, Yamamoto. So it's still that mix. So there's still a lot of people, but it wasn't unmanageable. Like it wasn't, and I was there on a weekend where everybody's like, oh, trade secret, make sure you go during the week. And it's like, I was there on the weekend and it was still good. And I was there on a sold out weekend. The people that, I bumped into, the fans, like everybody was in a good mood. So while there may be more different types of people, it still wasn't unmanageable. Like there were still people that lined that walkway waiting for, autographs, but the security will still like pull down the rope so people can walk through at intervals. Same thing with the practice fields. You have a lot of people watching, but there's still a lot of people walking around looking at the backfields, like even the minor league ones, because you can walk all over and see everybody. So it's a pretty big facility. I think it's not the chaos I was anticipating going into. So I had a really good weekend.
Cool deal. So that's going to do it. That's Amie's spring training report, ladies and gentlemen. Amie down in Glendale, getting to see the Doyers up front.
Yeah.
Let's go to our next topic. We mentioned it, we teased it, and this is this Nestor Cortes thing. So if you're a loyal listener, you already know where I stand about Smack Talk and the rules of Smack Talk. And I just find it, I don't know if it's funny or if it's sad, to tell you the truth, Amie, that this continues to be a topic. And the people that seem to be fanning the fire on this are the people that, again, I don't believe played instrumental roles in. Now, people may argue with me. Nestor Cortes played a very big role for the Yankees
He will be
and the
forever tied
Dodgers.
to Freddie Freeman in the World Series.
Do you have the actual quote from Nestor Cortes before we get into this? Let's set it up for our viewers and listeners.
Yes, so it was kind of a two-parter because I've seen two different quotes of his floating around. So one is, "We were the better team." I see it that way, and I'm sure everybody in the clubhouse sees it that way. And then the second one is they still take the beginning of that, "We were the better team." They can talk whatever they want to talk, but we win game 1, which we should have. We lost 2 and 3. We win game 4, and we should have won game 5. And that's where I think I texted you, like, you know how much I love playing the what if game, because it just like, yeah, if all of those things had happened, sure, that is an outcome, but that's not what happened. So like any given day, like that's baseball. You could have come and you could have had the better stats, but did you have the defense to pull it out? Did you win those games? There were people who thought we should have gotten farther in previous years with, the NLDS, and the Padres knocked us out one year and Arizona knocked us out the second. We should have won. We were the better team if you want to throw it out that way, but we didn't, because that's baseball. So, anyway, those are the quotes. That's my stance. Go.
I just think when you use that argument, when you do what Nestor Cortes did, that we were the better team. I go back to Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers would always say this. He would always like blame injuries and say, well, if we were healthy, I feel like no one's ever beaten us when we were healthy. It's like, man, that's you're making an excuse. It's all part of the game. But I just feel whenever you use the "we were a better team and you don't win," that excuse never flies. It never flies. And we're going to get to Brent Honeywell's clapback.
I mean,
But
it's an opinion. That's for sure. It is definitely an opinion.
I will say this, and this is where everyone's going to jump on me for saying this.
Don't jump on Juan. Don't jump on him.
I think there is some truth to what he is saying. And this is what I'm saying by that. And that is, I feel that World Series was much more competitive than people give it credit.
Mhm.
Because it ended in 5 games, people just assume it was the Dodgers just, steamrolled the Yankees, right? And that it could have been a sweep if the Dodgers didn't just give up in game 4 to set things up for game 5. I feel like those games are competitive. So when he says, well, if we win game 1 and we win game 4, we win game 5, we're going back to LA with a chance to win the World Series. The Dodgers were 1 game away from getting eliminated by the Show Pods in the first round. It just didn't work out that way. So while at the same time, I want to give him credit. There is some truth to what he's saying about how competitive. I just think he's the wrong guy to be delivering that message because he gave up one of the biggest home runs in the history of World Series. Like that home run, and we all know because we're still living I think we were still living off of Gibson, even though the Dodgers won in 2020. That Gibson home run was still moments,
It
and
was
it's
still
still well.
giving, and I was just gonna say it still will. There's
Yeah,
that home run is never going
it
to go away. Freddie's
it
is different and amazing in a different light.
Yes, I agree it's never going to go away, but I will say now that this Freddie home run, because of recency bias, we're going to see that, and that's going to be more prevalent in people's minds.
I
So I
just ordered a new RotoWear shirt because the one that I got from Fanatics did not fit well, and it was like, I wanna wear my shirt and I wanna remember that moment.
Yeah, so while at the same time I'm just sitting there going, God, can we just listen to Mookie on this and just be like, shut up? It's a new season. Stop talking. Let's focus on this season. But it's like, and part of I go back to this, Amy, because someone sticks a microphone in your face, you don't have to answer. So part of it is you get members of either new media, and I think this is new media, but you get people who ask these questions to these players. They're searching for content. They're trying to make something. They're trying to milk this as this conversation is boring. It's over with. This is all going to get rehashed again when the Yankees come to Los Angeles during the regular season and the Dodgers play. I get it. This is going to be now something where maybe there is animosity between these two teams because of how the Dodgers have been shooting their mouth off in the offseason. The Yankees obviously feel like they're embarrassed by this. So it's going to make that regular season matchup interesting. But again, I just feel,
Well, and they've been
Nestor,
rivals for forever, so, you know.
yeah, and it's like, Nestor, you're the wrong guy. Like you don't hear Aaron Judge saying this. You don't hear Juan Soto saying this, right? It's this is why I say it's the guys who didn't play pivotal roles, at least on the Dodgers side, that keep shooting their mouths off and has like, just let it go. Just acharapinsen.
Well,
Acharapinsen.
Well, I mean, he's entitled to say what he wants to say. Like that's we all get to say it, but it's also like I think somebody had put in one of the comments underneath his quotes like technically like they did score more runs or they did have a better bat. Like all of these stats where the Yankees led, but their defense didn't. And so at the end of the day, like you could pull stats. That's where like it's so frustrating where everybody puts all this pressure on the Dodgers for, the salary and all this other stuff, which we have something to touch on about that later. But it's like on paper, that doesn't matter. It's what do you do when you're on the field? And you may you may have all these crazy stats, but if you couldn't pull it out when it mattered in the game, and some of those games were so close, right? Like I think what Kike hit the one home run in the game, and then I think Theo hit the next one in the was it the NLDS or maybe it was even in the World Series. I can't. It's all blending at this point. But like they don't hit
I
those
think
home
you're thinking
runs.
of Game 5 against the Show Pods.
That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, but that game goes differently, and it's just that literally is baseball. Like Will Smith just had a quote when they were talking about his ankle this weekend, and he said, "If it's good, it's baseball. If it's bad, it's baseball. I have no control over it." And like all you can do is your best. Ma- Nestor did his best in the series. Like everybody did. The Dodgers won. It just happened to go their way in this series, and
Which leads me to the comments of Kenny Powder's cosplayer, Brent Honeywell. Can you let us know what Brent Honeywell said in response to Nestor Cortes saying that the Yankees were the better team?
So he was on the Baseball Isn't Boring podcast with Brad Foe, and he was pretty passionate about it. He started out talking about how Joe Kelly's a savage and how he just really wanted to remember running across the empty field when they won and they were in the Yankees' own backyard, and then he just segues right into it, and he's just like they weren't the best team. On paper, they weren't the best team. You can't even say it with a straight face. They weren't the best team. We were the best team. We were the better team. And he said, he had been saying all over the clubhouse, Dodgers in 4. He said, maybe if I didn't give up 12, maybe there's a chance, that it's not necessarily, in 5 games. They could have actually done it in game 4, like he said. But essentially his whole point was the Dodgers were the better team and they won.
I want to give him points for that. I'm glad that he acknowledges it. It shows he has a sense of humor. On again, Amie, this all to me is creating content. I just go back to Mookie. Just shut up. Just stop talking. Let's focus on the season. I shut up and said, this conversation is boring to me.
Did you hear Mookie? I think it was last week when people were asking him about Rocky's live BP. Did you hear his quote from there?
What did he say?
He said, it's practice. Who cares? If he shoved, it'd be a story. If he didn't shove, it'd be a story. No matter what, we'll see when we start in Tokyo.
Exactly.
And I feel like we all have that same kind of narrative, whether it's Will Smith saying, if he's good, it's baseball. If he's not good, it's baseball. Mookie's talking about whether he shoved or not. It's one of the things I love about this game is there's a new game every day. Obviously, when you get to the World Series, that you're going to hit a wall with that. But that is the beauty of it. You have a crappy game, you come back and you play a new one, you get a fresh slate the next day. And you do that for 162 games, and hopefully you earn the right to play in the Fall Classic. And, some teams do, some teams don't.
You know what that quote that you just read of Mookie, you know what that reminds me of? That's you. What are you going to do? What are you going to do?
Right?
Like, whenever I'm complaining, this is your answer is always like, and what are you going to do?
And
what are you going to do about
it? Because it's so ingrained in me, because that's what my best friend says to me. What are you going to do about it? Your gate changed at the airport 5 times. What are you going to do? Walk to the other side of the airport?
Like, I agree with everything that Mookie said there. But it's one of the unfortunate things, and I know it's ironic that I'm on the, we're creating a show here where we give our opinions that nobody cares about, and I'm sitting here shaming
our 5 listeners care
and sharing with shaming other people for trying to create content. I just feel like
I don't know that he's trying to create content. I mean, maybe he is. But in his heart of hearts, he probably does believe that, and good for him. I hope that motivates him, empowers him. I think he's on the Brewers now, but I hope that gives him new life in what he's doing now, because he is a good pitcher. At one point, I was talking with somebody, I think a year or two ago, where it was like, why don't we get Nestor Cortes? He ended up getting injured, but it was like at the time he was a pretty decent pitcher. So I don't know. I guess to me, it's just a reminder we're all going to have opinions.
So what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do?
I'm
gonna get a half helmet like Kike and wear it around.
So let's move on to our next topic, and this is an update on a story.
Whoa, you skipped over one of our topics.
Oh, that's right. My apologies. 1,000 pardons. Okay.
I was not gonna say anything and see if we came back around to it. But
1,000 pardons. That you're right. I did. And this was because this was a question that you specifically asked Dave Roberts. So 1,000 pardons to you, Reina. I deserve everything I get for that. Can you set up what you asked Dave Roberts when you were down in spring training?
Yeah, so I don't know who caught it. We have already talked on the episode about how Dave Roberts got the mini Porsche, I guess it was. I think that was Candy, one of our listeners, who clarified for us that Shohei had said that he would get Dave Roberts one if they won the World Series. Well, fast forward to this Friday, and we see content released by the Dodgers media that Dave Roberts had pranked Shohei. So if for anybody who hasn't seen it, Shohei went out to his car, opened it up, and all of these, they look like balls from like a play area, all fell out of the car all over the parking lot. There were a couple of big balls in there, and there was a picture with Dave Roberts screaming, laughing on it, and then he had a video that was played for Shohei, basically telling him that he was getting him back. So when we got into the media scrum the next day, I basically just asked Dave, they bring a lot of talent and character to the team, but also a lot of fun. Because they were tied 1-1 in this prank war, was he scared? And He said that he wasn't scared. He was on guard and he had a score to settle. So, because he had a good team around him, they had a collection of ideas, they were able to get Shohei back. But I'm curious to see how this escalates going forward.
This is the kind of stuff I think you do in spring training, right? This was what gets you through, because there's certain players that you ask them, they will tell you spring training is too long. And so this kind of stuff, I mean, you're out in Arizona, you're away from your family, all you're doing is practicing. Like, we still don't know. Nobody has informed us as to who won the wings contest,
Right.
the wing eating contest. So this is the kind of stuff that you do, but at the same time,
I feel like I
could you
asked there and I got the answer and I didn't write it down. So
how
I know it's muddled
wow,
in my head and
wow.
I'll remember, but
Party foul.
I
Party
want to
foul.
say
I
I
have
want
a
to say it was
beverage here, man.
I want to say it was one of the minor league coaches, but I don't remember the
Oh,
name.
really?
Yeah, it might have been. Don't quote me on that.
I think this is like this kind of stuff. I think is probably good for the new guys on the team, and because they can go ahead and because eventually once the season starts, especially if the Dodgers get off to a slow start, the pressure will start ratcheting up, because it's like, hey, you guys are supposed to be the greatest team ever assembled, and why aren't you out there winning every game or killing everybody? So, but I do think this has to be another version of team bonding, right? Even though it's between Roberts and Shohei, because I would assume now the Unicorns teammates are like, hey man, we got to get him back. Well, what are you going to do to get him back? Come on, let's come up with ideas. They're probably sitting in their rented houses out in spring training, thinking of, okay, what if we do this? Let's do the banana in the tailpipe. Like let's see what happens.
It honestly, like there has to be some facet of it, or just being able to kind of laugh at what's going on, because as we know, like there's a lot of everybody has questions about how Shohei's doing performance, even some of the other players, especially as they're coming off a World Series year. But then when you have stuff like this where you can see Dave Roberts laugh before he answers the question, and to me, like those are spring training wins. Those are wins in any respect, but it's just like, let's all just take a moment and breathe and just enjoy the moment. And like, I feel like that's kind of what they're doing, even amongst all this important work, that they're trying to make a team gel together and work together and make sure everybody's firing on all cylinders, but still have fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Unicorn did give an update that said, and I think this is the same thing he said last year, that he only needs about 50 at bats to be ready for the season. Again, this dude he makes it look so easy, everything that he's doing, but he puts in the work behind the scenes. We don't see it, right? So yes, he made his debut on Friday, but he's been working all this time. But I
And what
think
people don't see is he was doing his throwing program before he made his debut that night.
yeah, I just think it's such a baller move to just sit there and go, hey, just give me 50 at bats and I'll be ready for the season. And he goes 50-50 last year. I can't wait to see what he ends up doing this year, even though I have lowered expectations because he's pitching this year.
But
But
that's also going to benefit some of the other players. So for players like Will Smith, that before Shohei used to get, some of those breaks of getting to DH, and then Austin Barnes would get into the game. You don't have that now with Shohei as the dedicated DH. If he's going to be going in, or when, I shouldn't say if, when he goes in to pitch, at that point, you do get some people, they're still trying to decide, are they going to give him a break the day before he pitches, the day, after he pitches? That's where you can cycle and give these other guys breaks, give other people a shot. So
yeah, that's a good point. We did not see that last year, so we will see it this year. That maybe the Dodgers will be able to use different DHs. Anything else on the Unicorn before we move on to the next story?
no, these guys are, the camaraderie that they have with each other, whether it's pranks, playing ping pong, supporting each other out on the field, like they're great. This is a good team.
So this, as I was mentioning before I totally forgot that I had skipped over Amy's big question to Dave Roberts.
I know, it was my huge question, getting back in the swing of things.
My 1,000 pardons, Reina. We have an update on Derek Bender. For those of you who don't remember Derek Bender, who was Derek Bender, Amy?
He was the catcher last year in the Minnesota Twins minor league system that supposedly was accused of giving away pitches to the opposing batters, the Lakeland Flying Tigers, because he was tired of how long the season was and just wanted it to be over.
So the Athletic wrote a nice little piece on what his life is like now. And Amy, what is Derek Bender's life like now?
Well, his whole team has pretty much ghosted him. So nobody's really returning his texts. He's living in kind of like a baseball limbo. I didn't realize after, we covered the story and just kind of moved on, he got released about a month after that. And he had just gotten a $297,500 signing bonus. He was a sixth round draft selection. So I didn't know all of these pieces when we were kind of going over it the first time. But they're contemplating a permanent ban for him while the MLB still investigates this. And while technically he didn't break any laws, there were no crimes committed, he did betray his teammates. And so that's while he wants to stay in baseball, the big question is, can he be trusted? And now he's saying that he actually didn't do it. So there's kind of a okay, but you already admitted to it, but now there's some conversation that the MLB made him admit to it for whatever, and now he's saying that he didn't do it.
Wow, plot twist.
Mhm.
I was sitting there wondering, I was like, is this true regret? Right? Does he regret what he did until that section, right? Where he's like, wait, I never did this.
Mhm.
Because it does seem like that's something that you really burn down the house when you're like over it. Like
Mhm.
I'm done. I'm done playing baseball. But when I was reading this article, it didn't seem like this dude was done playing baseball.
And he's not, or he doesn't want to be.
I don't know, Amy. I don't know how he beats this, because if everybody is turning their back on him,
Would you trust him?
um, if I knew him well enough, like if I had a relationship with him where I truly knew him, I think I would know whether he did it or not. So if I had that relationship with him and I feel the way these players are treating him and ghosting him, I think there is some truth that he did it. And maybe this is his regret where, all right, I messed up. I want to go back on, I want to keep playing baseball. It's just like one of those moments where you just completely lose your mind and you do something really, really stupid. And unfortunately, stupid decisions, well, in most cases, stupid decisions have ramifications. It's one of these things where, is everything okay over there?
Yeah, it's fine. David wants a taco. It's just a motorcycle on the main street. It's fine. They're not after you.
Uh, I feel, again, this is not me knowing anything. I feel this is him realizing I made a terrible mistake. I want back in.
It's the
To,
FO of the FA, as my friend
yeah,
likes to say.
because I don't think a whole team would have turned on him if there were a couple of people that were willing to stand up for him and say, "Hey, guys, he didn't do it. He
Well,
didn't
I
do
think
it."
and initially in the article, there were people, I think, who stood by him, and then over time, that has dwindled. So there just for anybody who's a nerd about numbers, the violation is Rule 21A, and it prohibits players from intentionally losing games or attempting to lose games. And my favorite source of a source of a source close to the investigation is saying that there is evidence that he might have done it, and he's saying he absolutely did not do it. He had coaches speaking on his behalf saying like he was going through a rough time at the end of the season. It did show his immaturity, but that was one of the games that wasn't broadcast. So they don't actually have like tape to go back and review. So it is almost kind of hearsay at this point, but I don't know. And he just got dropped by his agency because even though this happened 5 months ago, while the investigation is ongoing, his agent recommended that he not speak to the media And because they also recommended that at the time, the article was alluding to like, I stayed quiet at the time. I didn't stand up for myself. This is continuing to go on. Now everybody's ghosting me. Now I want to speak up. And then when he spoke up, the agency dropped him because he went against advice. So
You know what this sounds like to me, Amy? It sounds like those Yankee fans who interfered with Mookie and now are coming out there. It sounds like not literal, but it sounds like people were putting shit on in a box and leaving it in front of his house, and he doesn't like that. Again, this is hard for me to answer your question. I probably
because you like, I'm not saying I don't like second chances, but I think
I do.
it depends on the circumstance and what happened and the level of contrition.
I do believe in second chances, but I would have a hard time. Like, you have to earn it. So while I would not be able to trust him as a teammate, he would have to earn my trust back by showing. And I just don't know
How do you do that?
yeah, how do you do that when you're not given the opportunity to do that? And if it happens again, what is the saying? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me, right?
And I was like, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Like,
Yeah.
and if this is, because I don't know if it borders on, this is me making assumptions, but if this borders on like a mental health issue, maybe he was feeling towards the end of the season, is that something that you can get him help for so that he has better coping mechanisms? Or, is it just like some of the people were saying, is it just the immaturity? Because he's in his early 20s. I mean, we've all done stupid stuff. It's just unfortunate that some of these players are in a position where you make a stupid decision and you don't think about the consequences. And this is going to haunt him for the rest of his life. If he even said, even if he gets to play baseball, this is going to follow him forever.
And this is why I feel like this is a decision. He realized what he did. And this is why when he says he didn't do it, I don't buy it. I just think he was probably in a bad spot. He lost his mind temporarily and did something really bad. And I think what makes it even harder, Amy, is he's a catcher. This is an instrumental role. It's not like he's a right fielder. It's not like, well, okay, all right, we'll give you an opportunity to prove yourself. He's a catcher. That's a huge position where a pitcher has to be able to trust his catcher.
It's almost like you read the article because they're actually having him. He would potentially.
I did read the article.
Because they said he would potentially have to play like first base because who could trust him behind the plate at this point? Like a pitcher's not gonna. Like,
I'm sorry. Did I make it seem like I didn't read the article?
No, I was being facetious.
Okay.
No, I know you do prep
Sometimes
work.
your sarcasm is too good.
Oh, so. Sorry. I'll try to laugh more next time.
Yeah, you should smile more, really.
Oh my God, Juan. We're gonna have words after this podcast. After, yeah, after some of my interactions this weekend.
I'm telling you that this story, it's a bummer for me because I like I said, I do believe in the second chances, but it's like, all right, I believe in second chances. You give him a second chance. Well, no, why don't you give him? So it's like,
but is it something where if you are contrite enough, because maybe he, like, much like we don't know the answer, I wouldn't be a potential teammate. Can you go to a team and be like, hey, is this a possibility? What can I do to make it up to you all? Like, is that something where you can pull the people that you play with to help build that trust? Like, I got to clean your shoes. Like, I mean, I know it's not something as droll as that, but like, what can I do to earn your trust back?
You know what sucks about this too is it's one of those things where he's an athlete and so he doesn't have time to waste. And I think this is something that he's going to take time. Like, I could very easily see him doing something else to try to earn the team's trust that's maybe outside of playing catcher. And the problem is by the time that you earn a team's trust and they are willing to give you a second chance, time may have passed and you are no longer, as good as you once were or had a chance. So it's just a real bummer of a story, I feel.
Well, and it makes me wonder because again, we've talked about this before. Like when you're in the minors and you're working your way up, I heard some people talking about this at the airport because everybody's there for spring training, so you're hearing like random baseball conversations all over. But like these guys who work their way up, they don't make a lot of money in the minor leagues. They're dependent on family, friends, whatever they do make as they're coming up. So if you are spending all of your time training and then maybe like I just read an article that one guy wanted to make it so bad that he was an Uber driver. He had like 7 different jobs while trying to earn his way back into the major leagues. Like how what do you have to fall back on? If baseball doesn't work, what were you using as your backup plan while you spent all of your time training or working just to survive to be in the game?
Yeah. It's I like this is it's a bummer of a story.
I
It
know.
really is.
I hope he finds a way through. Or if not, like, because you do see some of those accounts on like Instagram, like somebody was coming up through the minors and it didn't work out. I think it's Coach Rack or somebody has a story like that. And they found their calling in training other people. So all the stuff that they learned, they turn around and they use that either from a social media presence or, actually training other people like in real life. And it's like, maybe if this didn't work out, you'll find something more rewarding. And maybe that's his way to feel better about the situation.
And that's exactly the type of example that I was thinking, but that takes time. So by the time
Mhm.
you do that and then someone's willing to get your playing days may be over,
And
but
that may be the cost, though. It may be that his
exactly.
playing career will not recover from because that was kind of the quote that was coming up a lot was the betrayal, the inability to trust, and it's like, well, maybe you build it's still in baseball, but it's not gonna be as a player the way that you want it to be. And you know what? Maybe we're all wrong. Maybe he does make his way back. Maybe people are forgiving and they give him a second chance, and it does work out. Who knows? I
Yeah.
hope we have a better follow-up the next time we hear his name.
Yeah, watch this space. All right, let's wrap things up with our last story. And this was an update that
Talk
I
about a bummer.
yeah, we're gonna end with 2 bummers in a row. This is not something that I can say that I'm surprised about, Amy. I'm actually kind of bummed that I was actually right on this. But Amy, do you want to let us know what Tony Clark said?
Yeah, so you sent me something saying that basically the players as well as the MLBPA just in general, they're expecting a work stoppage. And Manfred had come out kind of a couple weeks ago alluding to this. Um, that he was like lightly cautioning that there's potentially going to be a lockout. So the CBA does expire December 1st in 2026. And it's a lot of talk also is pointing to the salary cap. We've heard Manfred alluding to the Dodgers did everything right within the rules. So then it leads us that, okay, well, the rules then need to change if he has enough people complaining about this. Um, but it's a bummer for me because the last time this happened, it hurt players. And players who were on the IL, players recovering, they couldn't talk to their ownership, their teams, they couldn't get the not only the training that they needed, but the healing and I'm blanking on the word, not healing services, but you know what I'm trying to say. Um,
Yes.
they couldn't get the support that they needed, like Max Muncy with his injury even, because they can't when
Medical
there's a
treatment.
works that medical treatment. Yes, that's a way better way to put it. Um, but when they're in that lockout, they can't have any communication. And I just like, for what? Because some owners refuse to spend? Like,
Yeah, it really there shouldn't be a surprise to it because it's almost people always say that sometimes sports and in particular baseball is reflective of what's going on in the country. When you see Jackie Robinson breaking the color barrier and stuff like that. But when you have situations like this, tell me where you've heard this before, where we're in a sport where billionaires want to cap how much money labor can make, but they're allowed to make as much money as they want. As someone online said, you might be a bootlicker if you support the corporate people who can make money unlimitedly, but then choose to limit how much money the labor makes. And
Like,
that
I could see if they were mad if, like, okay, so we'll use the Dodgers as an example since that seems to be what everybody's throwing around. But they spent quite a bit in the offseason, and they're gonna pay a huge luxury tax on that. I could see if MLB was like, okay, I'm just gonna throw out an arbitrary number. Let's say it's 150 million in the fine or whatever. We're only going to split 50 million between all of the owners, and then that 100 million just goes somewhere else and disappears. I could see if owners were pissed off about that, but they're going to pay this luxury tax into the pool, and the people who draw from it will still benefit. So you are choosing not to spend. This is the dead horse that we beat every week. You're choosing not to spend, but you're also drawing from that pool. And if the pool gets bigger, that still means you're pulling more money from it. What are you complaining about?
And this is why, for me, I appreciate that the Dodgers went all in to try to win a World Series like this, because when everybody talks about a dynasty or that the Dodgers are going to go on this run, I don't think anybody foresaw that a work stoppage may play a huge part in the Dodgers not having a dynasty. It is incredibly frustrating because we all know how this is going to be resolved. The players are going to lose. They're going to lose in this situation because you going against billionaires. Now the billionaires are going to lose money, but they're not going to lose as much money as the players are going to lose.
Even last time, the season still started technically on schedule, so the owners didn't lose anything.
Yeah, so it is just I hope Tony Clark and the rest of the union really stand their ground, because the owners are making this money because of the players.
And regardless, they're making money regardless.
And they'll sit there and make the argument, well, we're putting up the money. And it was like, in the end, the salaries that you are paying these players, you can afford to pay these salaries because the amount of money that you are making off of them.
Off of them and drawing if you're a lower market team.
If you weren't making as much money as you were making off of them, you wouldn't be paying them what you're paying them. Right.
And let's not forget that the MLB just had a record high in their revenue, the 12.1 billion that they made. So like people are it's that, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, but also they are making money. They are not losing money. The profits have gone up. And I continue to refer back to that quote you found about Hal Steinbrenner of like, well, we can't do what the Dodgers are doing. And they have the higher revenue according to Forbes. And it's like, so no, you choose not to. And I was talking to one of the guys at the brewery, happens to be an Angels fan, and he was saying like, God, I hate the Dodgers. Like they took everybody. They have this huge payroll and they took it all. And I'm like, what stopped your ownership group from getting them? Because like, yes, we did pay them and they came here, but they were free agents. It's not like it was mandatory that they come to the Dodgers. Any team can offer to pay them more. The Mets just paid Soto so much money just so that they could have him. Who's stopping any other team from doing that other than the ownership themselves?
It fascinates me that the owners can try to play the victim, and anybody and that's why, to me, when I hear stuff that like Jim Bowden puts out there, what really irks me is stuff that is just not genuine. And it's just like, you can't sit here and tell me that, I'm supposed to believe the owners are crying poor. I don't buy it. And this dog that you're trying, or this car you're trying to sell me, this dog don't hunt, to mix metaphors.
Right. Well, and that the guy, one of the guys from the brewery admitted, he's like, no, you're right. It is our ownership. Like it sucks. And it's like, okay, once you get past the venting and you go back to logic, they're willing to acknowledge, okay, yeah, it is our ownership not willing to spend, but it's not only our ownership group at the Dodgers, but also fans. Is it great that ticket prices go up every year? No, but at the same time, you are paying for the experience that you get having these players versus them not spending. Because remember, when we didn't spend 2 years ago, people were in a kerfuffle of like, what? We didn't get anybody in the offseason? So it's like, okay, you guys pick a lane. You can always change your mind. I get that. But like, what do you really want? Like, isolate that, Dodgers fans, and then other fans, like a work buddy today was telling me, the Brewers fan, he's going to go visit his family in Wisconsin. He's looking at tickets. Behind home plate was $62. I was like, never. I don't even know that we have some nosebleeds for certain games for that price. But look at the team that we have that's on the field. And so, I
For
don't know what to tell people, because to me it's like it's logic, but
Yeah, it sucks. It really sucks. They're really cutting off their nose to spite their face,
and the
and it's
fans and the players suffer for it. Those are the
yeah,
people who are suffering.
and it's just a loser for everyone. It really is a loser for everyone. A quick update before we wrap things up. We had talked about ESPN opting out, or the mutual opt out between the TV deal between ESPN and Major League Baseball. Boog Shambi of ESPN, and he also works for the Cachorros, doing play by play, came out and said that Major League Baseball made a mistake by opting out of this deal. Now, I take it with a grain of salt what he said, because he is an ESPN employee and his job is calling baseball games. So I do think Boog has a vested interest in Major League Baseball staying with ESPN. Um, I it's interesting he made those comments saying that he made a mistake, only because it's like, where else is Major League Baseball going to get that amount of money? Because it is true, they could turn to the streamers, and the streamers may end up giving them less money than what ESPN was going to pay them. Like the NBA just recently renegotiated their contract deals. NBC is going to be taking over. They're set for the next 20 years, and they're making billions on their TV deal. So the reason why I bring it up, Amie, is it all stems again, this whole issue of how the rich blame the poor for their problems. And I know people are going to sit there and go, Juan, baseball players aren't poor. And it's like, no, they're not. But keep in mind, not everybody on a Major League Baseball team is making what superstars are making. Not everybody is making Shohei money. Not everybody is making Juan Soto money, right?
Look at even I know this is a trite example and I'm being somewhat funny, but like Kike is making 6.5 million. Like, you've got other people who are making plenty more, but that's even not considered that much. And there are players that are making way less than that at the league minimum.
And look, what I'm saying, drink, by the way, I think I went a really long time without saying it, guys. This is, I find this fascinating. We're going to wrap up on this, and that is the Dallas Mavericks recently traded Luka Doncic to the Lakers, and Mavericks fans lost their mind. Dallas Mavericks fans were extremely angry. I don't know if you saw any of this, Amie. They were literally like death threats against the general manager of the Mavericks. They were bringing coffins to the game. Like, there
This is like
was
reminiscent of draft day with Kevin Costner.
like, they were literal protests outside of the Mavericks arena. The Mavericks just recently announced season ticket renewals for next year. So the timing on this is horrible. And guess what,
Oh.
Amie? Their tickets went up. Their season tickets went up.
Wait, they
So
lost their star player and their season tickets went up?
exactly. So what I found very interesting, and I'm curious if you think of this, I believe this was Sarah Spain of ESPN. Or no, not Sarah Spain, excuse me. I forget what her name is. I'm giving credit to the wrong person, but she was on Small. Her last name is Smalls.
You're
She said,
killing me.
exactly. You're killing me, Smalls. She is a native of St. Louis, and St. Louis lost their football team to the Rams. And she brought up a very interesting point. She just put it out there, and it made me think. What she was saying was like,
Oh, no, not thinking.
exactly. She was just like, before the Rams moved to LA, ownership was making some really, really odd decisions. And it seemed like it was decisions that were kind of trying to run off their fan base. like doing it on purpose, so then the ownership can prove, hey, we don't have the support. I can't make money here in this city.
Are we
I
having a
have
major league? Like, are we having a real life
exactly.
meets major league?
Exactly. So what it seemed like, it just got me thinking, with all these Major League Baseball teams who cry poor and say the Dodgers are the root of all evil. We can't compete with the Dodgers. We can't do any of this.
Which is the model you should be following, actually, to make money. But go on.
Like, are these owners doing it to themselves because they want to get something else, or again, they want it's just something about this whole thing just does not smell right.
I feel
And
like we're in a Scooby-Doo episode.
I don't blame the players for not trusting the owners. I really don't. For me, a cap is a deal breaker. If I hear
Mhm.
cap in negotiations, I'm walking away. And if
You
that's
need
the
a
case,
floor. You need a floor.
you guys got to open up your books. We got to see.
But even if they open up their books, so what? That's not gonna do anything unless there's repercussions. Some of these teams, as we've
What are you
talked
gonna do?
about,
What are you gonna
what are
do?
you gonna do? Okay, I looked at it. I saw that your books are lame, and now what? What repercussion is there? Because as we've seen, there's no punishments for some of these teams, the A's, who have 2 grievances that still are pending. What are that's
But
open your
that's my
books, but there
example.
needs to be a consequence.
That's
Relegation.
my example in terms of what Smalls was talking about. What did John Fisher do to the A's before they moved?
Mm,
He made it like he drove those fans away. Why
yeah.
did he drive those fans away? Now he's going to Major League Baseball saying, "Hey, I can't survive here. Nobody comes to my games." And it's like, but you made these decisions to run these fans away. And now all of a sudden you move to Sacramento and you start spending money. You start signing players. I read one article that
Well, we
picked
also know that he's spending money to get to the player pool or to
well,
the luxury
that
tax
too,
pool.
that too. But there are some people that are saying that the Athletics may be a surprise in the American League West. So
Mm.
it's just, again, I think the players are justified in their mistrust of the owners, because I believe the owners are not acting in good faith, and is extremely frustrating because it hurts everyone, and it's an unforced error. It's a self-inflicted wound, Amy.
And it's not just the like, I know we tend to look at the players, the front offices, the whatever. It's also the people you just mentioned, like even somebody who's a broadcaster or an announcer for ESPN. But it helps the labor, the genuine labor like behind the team, because all those people at the athletics stadium lost their jobs.
Right.
Like that's one thing I will say from everything I've heard. I don't know firsthand. I don't work for the Dodgers, but everything I've heard from people who sell concessions to the people who are trainers and work in the organization, they are treated well. I think I shared when I was at the World Series, the majority of the people in my season ticket holder section were all people who were flown in from like Arizona, from the minor league camps, them and their families to come watch the games. When they're at spring training, they're being put up at, some of the people at hotels. Like this organization takes care of its labor force. That's also something that goes with spending money, taking care of the people who make your stadium go. We see those people behind the scenes. Those people are not on the field making plays, but that's the reason that the stadium runs. If you are not taking care of your financial obligations, including your players, but also the labor force that runs your ballpark, security, concessions, anything in that capacity, you're doing a disservice to the fans, to the players, and to the people who work for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's going to do it for this fluffy episode.
And get ready because Sasaki did make his debut in the 5th inning.
Do we have
So
an update of what he did?
I was watching it, but then I was listening to you expound on something, and so I didn't want to miss it. So
I'm sorry that my brilliance distracted you.
No, I was paying attention to you and not the game because I'm recording it. It's fine.
A
I'll go
thousand
back to it.
pardons. All right, obviously you guys are going to be able to see this afterwards, but just let me see if I can get quick. He went 1 inning, struck out 2, gave up 1 hit. So I'm sure everyone's losing their mind right now on social media, handing him the Cy Young already. Sasaki,
Well, it depends on who was watching the game and not, because at one point I think he had 2 on base when he was at 10 pitches. So depending on how people interpret it, I'm just like, hey, it was his debut. Like when he had his first like live like bullpen, and there were like 50 million people there, like the pressure this kid probably feels, like, God, just I don't know. Let the guy pitch. Like,
let him pitch.
Let him bowl if he wants to bowl. Well, no, maybe not with his arm the way that it is.
So that's going to do it for this episode. Any last words, Amie?
Albert Pujols wants to be a major league manager sooner rather than later. So good for him.
And
Albert.
He will be managing the Dominican team at the WBC. So,
so just a little nod to our Theo. So,
Theo's, I think, really working hard to try to get a manager job in Major League Baseball. So
I hope he gets it. Good for him.
That's something to keep an eye on. So that's going to do it for this episode. If you've been listening to us on the audio portion of the show, please make sure you're subscribed to the podcast, rate us, write a review, help spread the word, let everybody know to come join the party. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, hit that notification button, give us a thumbs up, leave us comments, engage with us, let us know what you think, and most importantly, make sure you're following us on social media, on X at BB Shangri-La, on Instagram, YouTube, and Bluesky at Baseball Shangri-La. She is Amie Cuevas. I am Juan Ramirez. Nos despedimos con un beso. Amie, say goodbye to the people.
Goodbye, people.